Hi, I'm Lubomir. I want to share with you some more of my thoughts. Part 8. My experience. How to embark on a spiritual journey and what does it mean in practice? It is possible to find yourself on this path and not even realize it. You start to practice some relaxation techniques because stress, you start to practice martial arts, or you become interested in the arts that come from the Far East, or you come across a book that raises questions you didn't know before and you become interested in spiritual literature, then it is up to your approach and the authority you choose to guide you. That authority may be a person from a time long gone. Each person's mind is different and may tend towards different ways of realizing the path and ways of guidance. The important thing is to begin the practice as soon as possible. This means learning to do spiritual practices on a daily basis. In the beginning, it is concentration on breathing. At first, you will only manage to practice for maybe a few minutes, and you will get a sense of how much you are doing for your path and how much effort you are putting in. Over time, your mind will begin to get used to the new kind of exertion and will be able to practice for 30 or 45 minutes. The length of the exercise needs to be adapted to your mind's ability to concentrate. There is no point in exercising unnecessarily long unless the mind is in sufficient condition to cope with such a long exercise, and it wanders most of the time during the exercise. Do not prolong the exercise unless you can hold the object of the exercise and your mind produces one thought after another. In order to reduce the mental contents in the exercise, it is necessary to practice mindfulness. Being mindful means that during the day you try to be aware of yourself as one who is doing something and at the same time be aware of what you are doing. This is how you gain distance from the ordinary activities of life. This distance gives you perspective and allows you to take control of your emotions to some degree. This creates the conditions for a successful practice of concentration, which you should do regularly, preferably at the same time and place, to minimize distractions not only from the environment but also in your mind. This period is considerably demanding for the student and puts his will to a severe test. He must have great determination to persevere. Exercise often does not produce the results he imagines. All the literature he studies brings a flood of information. These bring to the surface problems that he has not had to deal with before. He finds that the more he delves into this information, the less he understands it. However, systematic study in conjunction with the right guidance will enable him to begin to navigate all those ideological currents. He needs to reevaluate his goals and the things that are important to him. Many of them will lose their meaning, and thus their bearer or user will also lose their meaning. There are frustrations associated with that, and here it must be emphasized that the spiritual path is a path fraught with difficult frustrations. If someone promises to lead you on a spiritual path full of joy, beauty, and love, they do not know what they are talking about, and you should avoid such a person. It is not a journey for the sake of a journey. The goal is not the journey itself, as some self-proclaimed masters like to say. The destination is at the end of this long, arduous, and harrowing journey, but by getting closer to the goal, you are already gaining a benefit that you cannot get anywhere else. It is an increase of your inner freedom, but not the freedom that all the fools talk about. Their freedom is just the liberation from one thing in exchange for the bondage of another. Real freedom is not an exchange of object for object, but complete independence from any object. Any subject that is dependent on an object is a fiction. Therefore, the only possible and true spiritual path is the gradual renunciation of the objects to which the subject is attracted. And this is painful. Such a subject experiences agonizing to the point of death throes. But how much more terrible is the drowning in the mire of fiction, how much more wonderful it is to emerge from it and breathe fully and freely. All through this period, the student has no firm ground under his feet. The change comes the moment he crosses the threshold of the door that leads to the world of non-thoughts. Here he comes to know a world which is not determined by the opinions of men and not even by his own. That is why this is the space in which he gains his first certainty. He begins to stand firmly on his feet, because no one can take this experience away from him or even question it. He has come to understand that mental contents are only shadows of things and not things themselves. He sees the sheer being of things in the present moment without time, without before and after. He has entered the path of meditation. By deepening meditation, a new space opens up. It is a space without limiting boundaries that contains all that exists. Nothing can escape it. Nothing is lacking in it. What it contains is not recognized as separate from man. It is not the world of matter that surrounds man and also constitutes this man. It is knowledge transcending matter. By this understanding, the world of matter is raised to the sphere of spirituality. One comes to know the real being of things without attributes. They are purified of what the subject normally puts into them. Ideas create and recreate a fictional world of attributes, opinions, and attitudes. Ideas are driven by wanting, which is the fuel of the rotor that creates the objects on which the life of the false self depends. In meditation, we free ourselves from this false self made up of a tangle of mental contents. Its removal, which is only temporary at this stage, creates emptiness in the mind. This enables one to see things as they are, in a continuous succession of infinitesimally brief moments of flowing presence. A new subject emerges, which is different from the old one, made up of the body and the natural mind. It is a subject, figuratively speaking, floating in infinite space. This subject knows boundless space and at the same time everything contained in it. All that is, all being, is in this infinite space, outside of which there is only non-being. In this state, the mind sees the reality of things reflected like a mirror. At the same time, it enables him to see the world of mental contents as the source of the existence of a world that appears real to a person without this experience. This results in the dissolution of all the certainties he has hitherto found in this world. The hitherto inviolable view of religion, people, interpersonal relations, the universe, death, and God disintegrates. He must reassess all his attitudes in the light of his new experience, but no one has to force him to do so. That is the charm of such an experience, that you have absolute certainty of its truth. The reason is that its truthfulness is not for you or anyone else to decide. It is an experience springing from beyond human understanding. Therefore, it cannot be invented or learned. The next stage of emptying the mind is contemplation, which is the next stage of deepening one's own experience. Here begins the real spiritual journey, the formation of the truly spiritual life to which every human being is called. This new part of the spiritual journey, from the entry into contemplation to the great enlightenment, can be divided into 3 stages. In the first stage, there is a complete union of the subject and the object of his cognition. The subject has become all that is, all that exists. It is not here or there, it is everywhere simultaneously, unlimited, unbounded, without beginning and without end. The death of the body and of natural reason is not the death of this subject, and therefore does not affect it. It no longer distinguishes between the mirror and the reflection in the mirror, but his consciousness is still present. This state brings a profound insight into the mind and a soothing emptiness that gives the impression of absolute freedom and a kind of invincibility or eternity of the subject. He considers that he is at the end of the journey and that by remaining in the present moment in complete union with being is his infinity. For this reason, this state is often mistaken for great enlightenment, but there is still a long way to go. It is necessary to advance to the second stage, where even this subject begins to reveal itself as fictitious, which will make it possible to advance on the path of its killing. By affecting this state of emptying the mind, the subject as the experiencer of activity is eliminated. The one who was previously aware of the unity of the mirror and the being reflected in it is lost. It is an emptiness devoid of the subject who would experience this state. It is the entry into the phase where the great death is realized, which precedes the great enlightenment. It is the complete negation of the subject as someone who knows. The mind is emptied of the life of the subject, thus it is the death of the previously experienced unlimited self. Only the inexhaustible source, the stream of being, remains. The frame of the mirror is lost and its contours cannot be discerned. Emptiness stripped of the subject, but still remaining being as an absolute object. Yet it is necessary to move on, even if there is no one to move on. It is necessary to enter the third phase where emptiness engulfs even the inexhaustible wellspring of freely gushing being. The mirror ceases to reflect because the object it reflected has disappeared. It is emptiness brought to perfection, emptiness without being as object, even though the consciousness of emptiness as absolute subject still remains. Everything is clear and empty, which is the result of the shedding of all wanting. But there is still a kind of latent consciousness that is imbued with emptiness. It has failed to erase the distinction between being and non-being. There is still a lack of awakening, a higher understanding that would break through this condition and allow the light of great enlightenment to enter, a light that will flood the negative emptiness with positivity void, a breakthrough into a void full of free and clear activity that can be called God. This is the realization of the first phase of the great enlightenment. Everything here suddenly makes sense, the whole spiritual journey that has had to be traveled up to this point only to find that it was a fiction. The spiritual journey is a fiction, the journey of the fictional self to its fictional object of reality. The great enlightenment also liberates from the path to freedom, but this understanding has to be realized, and this is not possible without traversing the journey at the cost of painful wounds and injuries to which the self that has embarked on this journey will eventually succumb. The world becomes pure light, which is the effect of God in God. There is no subject relating hand to object. There is no distinction of being and non-being, life and death. There is no one to appropriate or realize this state, this realization. It is a limpid activity that will only be shattered by human nature. It creates knowledge of the world through the duality of being and non-being, that is, the form of supernatural reason, and from it emerges the world of ideas of natural reason. The mirror has lost its shape and spreads a mute light without color or reflection, which shines in itself, for itself, and in itself fills the void without objects. This light is, as long as it is not disturbed by the shadow of any object of wanting, it is a state of no thoughts. In order to better understand the difference between emptiness and the void, I will give an example. There are two houses. The first one the owner has had cleared out. He has stripped it of furniture, carpets, statues, and even floors and partitions. That is emptiness. The second house is untouched. Everything remains as it is, but it is without an owner. That is void. It is only a figurative, approximate description through a parable. Every state you attain, every understanding you gain from it, you have to further deepen and expand over time. This will create the conditions for further progress. To consider maintaining any state of mind as the ultimate goal is like holding back urine and thinking you may never drink again. The understanding that has come out of meditation must also reach into your ordinary activities. Meditation is like the head of a snake dragging its body behind it. First, the head enters a place and then the whole body moves there. So also, your daily activities have to be brought over time through mindfulness into the state that you realize in meditation. It must not be forgotten that the stage of progression, the moment you realize it, appears as the end of the path, as if one can go no further. You always see only beyond the horizon of your experience. That is why it is necessary to believe the testimonies of people who have attained full enlightenment and to go on to its realization. But the full end of the journey is only the second stage of the great enlightenment. I myself cannot testify and therefore cannot speak about it. Therefore my description does not contain the highest perfect understanding. Do not be so that you can be reborn in this lifetime. Please consider subscribing to this video channel. Thank you.